welcome back to the channel, and we have another authentic Disney Star Wars disaster, where Dave Filoni explained that Star Wars canon is incoherent and inconsistent and how that is okay. He explains how George's vision doesn't matter, and at the end of the day, people can do whatever they want within the Star Wars universe. And we know that is Disney Star Wars trash. We know that that is shill material, and we know the only people to appreciate this kind of trash Star Wars procreated by Dave Filoni, Kathleen Kennedy, Disney, and Bob Iger are shills who get invited to all their premieres, like Carly King, and Fake News Kyle Katarn, and Star Wars Sexplained, and much, much more. Even Eric Voss from New Rock Stars. They are brainwashed by Lucasfilm. They have sold their souls to the Mickey Mouse, and now they are out to get us. They are out to get the real fans who stand for George Lucas, who stand for the first 6 movies, and who want Disney Star Wars to crash and burn because of what it has done to the brand we have loved so much. So, welcome to this ridiculous video that I didn't even want to make, but I am, because like I said, even though I'm not going to be reviewing shows on here, I will give pointers to ridiculous, outrageous things. Like so. So, to start this off, he says, I don't sit there honestly and think that my point of view is greater or better than anyone else's. I tend to look at it a bit like Arthurian tales, to be honest, and how depending on what version you're reading in translation, they can be wildly different. No, they can't be wildly different, but okay. But Arthur's usually Arthur and does the thing he's supposed to do. Well, that doesn't apply to The Last Jedi because Luke wasn't Luke, and Luke didn't do things Luke would do in that film, so automatically contradicting himself. Those things remain true, and that's very much folktale and fairy tale type of ideology. If we tell a story in animation, or if it's in a comic, and then we bring it to the screen in a different way, we might make changes out of the medium, out of the bias of the person making it, but it still should maintain that why. Why change a story that's already there when you're bringing it to a different medium? Like, what is the point? Like, this guy, he doesn't even know what he's saying. Like, he just says absurd things. He doesn't care about George Star Wars. I have no idea what happened, because he used to be a complete George Lucas, acolyte for years, and now all of a sudden, since he's gotten this position at Lucasfilm, and the only reason he got this position at Lucasfilm was because he became a puppy to Kathleen Kennedy and a puppy to Walt Disney Company. Henceforth, let's move on with this garbage article about garbage Disney Star Wars as we continue to suffer from the decisions of the CCO at Lucasfilm. Here, of course, now we have the George Lucas slander, which is what every Disney shill, every Lucasfilm exec under the sun likes to do in every article they make. They like to point out how George did this wrong, George did that wrong, yet George was the one with millions and millions of fans all over the world, and Disney Star Wars is the one who ripped away 75% of their fan base. He claims canonicity at that time was very cut and dry. The only thing canonical back then was if George Lucas did it. And you know what? That is the way. George's way or the highway. It makes sense because everything not made or touched by George Lucas and his team is garbage. It is garbage. Like, I'm telling you. George called what's his name? Tony Gilroy about Rogue One. George liked Rogue One. It's not a terrible film. He liked Solo. He went to the premiere of Solo, when he wasn't at the premiere of The Last Jedi, right? Things, those 2 things are George stamped and approved. So, therefore, the only reason they're on my wall. But, again, they're still nowhere near George's stuff. I'm sure there are things George would have changed, and I know there are things that George would have changed, the tone and tons of things, But my point being, is we don't like trash, and they're saying that it's cut and dry when you keep things good and stable, which is again ridiculous. That may have been Filoni's view, but it wasn't the only one Lucasfilm encouraged in the fan base. Lucasfilm execs routinely presented a tiered approach where Lucas's movies were absolute canon G level, and other works were at second tier, adjusted if necessary to fit in with Lucas. That is how it was done before Star Wars was sold to Disney. And that is exactly how it still should be today. Unfortunately, we are pumped with these fake fans who run Lucasfilm, these George Lucas phobes, and a bunch of shills to go watch everything, say it's a 10 out of 10, go to the red carpets, and have a shillgasm with every single project that releases. Even the worst, most horrendous episode of all time, The Acolyte Episode 3, the worst Star Wars episode ever created. As he continues, Filoni airs a very different view of the Lucasfilm Story Group's role to the one held among the fan base. In his opinion, Lucasfilm shouldn't be about policing the canon. So, what does that mean? It shouldn't be policing the canon. It means Lucasfilm shouldn't be keeping people in check. Lucasfilm should let people do whatever they want, whenever they want. For example, if I wanted to make a story about how Jar Jar Binks was the most powerful Jedi Master known to man, and all of this takes place before Episode 1, and he was this wise Jedi Master who was a Gungan too, and he wanted to save this little Gungan boy or girl or whatever from uh an OPC killer, and he has to go save them, and that little Padawan apprentice thing kid dies, and now he goes back and he's like, oh no, Mitha let the little kid die. And now the whole Gungan Council's like, oh, Force is bad luck. You saw no more use of the Force. And that's why he's, banished from Oto Gunga in Episode 1. They could, from what he's saying, that could fit in Star Wars canon. And that's perfectly fine. And we could say Jar Jar cuts himself off from the Force, the time period before Episode 1, in between his project and Episode 1. He cuts himself off from the Force, therefore he has no ability. There you go. With Dave Filoni's little explanation, that could fit into the Star Wars universe. And that is the dumbest, most ridiculous story I have ever heard. And I just spoke it out loud. And again, this shows how Dave Filoni is not going to save Star Wars. I've known this since The Mandalorian Season 3. I've known this the second he became CCO. I knew that there was no going back. After those horrible last 2 episodes of Ahsoka, and the ridiculous decision of Sabine Wren gaining the Force out of nowhere, pushing Ezra over a mile-long gap between a whole Star Destroyer when she couldn't even lift a cup before. Like, you cannot defend this stuff anymore. It is just a disaster. And the fact that they're encouraging people to dilute and change George's story is absolutely insane. He compares the role to that of the Jedi Council. What was the Jedi Council? Super, super corrupt, super, by the book, and super, super stupid. That's what the Jedi Council was. Channeling a range of different perspectives and views into one cohesive flow of thought, which is woke Star Wars. That is what one cohesive flow. Every lead needs to be female. Every show has to have this many of this kind of people, this many of that kind of people, and that is the one cohesive flow of thought for you. As well as the, let's make sure we dilute things, because every project dilutes something from Star Wars and changes something, again, other than Rogue One and Solo, and that's fine. But are the Legends versions of those stories better? 1,000%, but are they doable, and do they destroy Star Wars? No, absolutely not. Um, if a contradiction is necessary to tell a story, he doesn't really seem to mind. So, let's think. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Let's stick with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Vader standing by the fire, watching Obi-Wan get taken away, the person he has been tracking down for years, 10 years, he has been tracking this man down, and he lets him walk away with this random lady who shot at him and this random droid who is helping him. Vader would never do that. His suit was actually fire resistant, so therefore that would not work. Um, Again, makes no sense. But oh, Obi-Wan had to get it away. Like thinking like a toddler. They're cheap. It's a cheap escape. It's a cheap trick played by Disney to keep the show running and to not have to get creative. That's what that was. He freezes like Joe Biden and stares over a fire and just walks away. And Obi-Wan walks away, and we're fine. It's done, and we don't. Nothing happens. He just stares. Like there's no like that wouldn't happen. You know, um, the fact Reva chasing down Luke. Luke's never seen a lightsaber before. He's had a happy childhood. Boring one, but a happy one. He hasn't gone through a lot of trauma, and in there, he just doesn't remember anything. Obi-Wan shouldn't leave Tatooine at all. Like there's just a lot of problems and contradictions with that show. But apparently, it's Deborah Chow's show. Therefore, she can make all the decisions, and it doesn't matter what they do, how it contradicts the story. And that's what he's saying here. Um, all that matters is, do you like the story? Well, then it's canon for you. I don't like any of them that you guys have made in the past 12 years of Star Wars, other than Rogue One, Solo, and the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. Those are the only 3 things that I have been 100% like okay with. Not 100% think they are amazing films, but that I'm okay with, that I believe do somewhat continue the legacy of George Lucas Star Wars. There are 3 things, and that is all of them. Um, you know, Ahsoka would have been if they didn't completely destroy the show halfway through. And I realize it's just a bucket of fan service at the end of the day, which is just great and really does not serve a purpose. The only important thing that happens is episode 5, when Ahsoka learns her lesson, live or die, and she overcomes, her past traumas and becomes, Ahsoka the White, right? That is the ultimate switch for Ahsoka, and that's the only time she ever develops throughout the entire show. And that's all we needed. We didn't need anything else. And you could say, well, having Anakin, that didn't need to happen, so you're contradicting yourself. No, it did need to happen. That's the only way Ahsoka wouldn't be, depressed and angsty like she was when she was Ahsoka the Grey. And that makes her, Ahsoka the White, and it fully transitions her arc. That's the only good part of that show. The rest of it is just shillgasm material. All of it. The whole rest of that show is just, okay, where can we make people want to blow? That's all that show is. Um, I don't hate it, but I don't like it. It's very in the middle for me because there are things that I just cannot. Like the Sabine thing, and I could get into that show, but there are beautiful things like Ahsoka's story and Anakin's story, and seeing 3PO again was great, but whatever, it's doesn't matter. So if you're going with that, then yeah, you guys have made 3 things out of who knows how many that I've actually really appreciated. And you can't count Clone Wars final season because George made every single one of those stories with Dave before, they bought Lucasfilm. They were already done, outlined, and scripted. And some of them were even storyboarded. Some of them even had full, previs done. So that doesn't count. You can't call that Disney Star Wars. It's not. It is George Star Wars, right? Like, that's not a thing, which is absurd, that people even try to call that Disney Star Wars, and it's not. And you see the huge tonal difference between that and everything else Disney has made, because it's not Disney stuff. Do I necessarily like or agree with them sidelining Anakin and Obi-Wan from the whole show to focus on the Martez sisters and the Bad Batch for money? No. The only reason they even had the Bad Batch arc in was to rake in cash in order to make their new show. It was just to set up the show. When what really would have made sense was to have the Utapau Crystal arc with Anakin and Obi-Wan talking about Ahsoka's absence. Then we go into Ahsoka, then we go into them meeting together. That would have been a full, complete season that lined up and was a cohesive story. Instead of throwing in Bad Batch, which was a mid arc for nothing and just for a cash grab. Most of that season was a cash grab other than the last arc, and that's really unfortunate. To see that show, which made me, just kind of be wasted, and there should have been a lot better consistency there. But he's saying here consistency doesn't matter. So if you guys want to draft a story about Palpatine being the weakest Sith of all time and the lesbian witches from the Acolyte being the most powerful beings in the galaxy, you can do so. If you want to say, oh, Anakin Skywalker, yeah, he isn't the chosen one. It's actually May and Osha from the Acolyte. You can also do that too, and that's not contradictory. It is. He says it's contradictory too. That it's contradictory is allowed, but you can go ahead and do that. If you want to say, what else could we do? How could we? You have to think about how to contradict Star Wars. It's not an easy task, unfortunately. It's easier to just make it rather than to contradict it, but they really are trying. They're trying so hard to contradict everything. Let's think. What else? So we could gender swap Luke Skywalker in animation. Let's say, oh, we felt like gender swapping Luke, and that's okay. You could gender swap Leia into a guy, and then everything would be okay, and that's okay. It's just a little inconsistency. This is the level of, just absurdity that Disney Star Wars presents, and Dave Filoni will not save it. If you are holding on like I was for years, let go. Just let go. It is gone. Keep watching it so that if somehow there's something really good, then I guess you can, look at that and be like, do this, and we can say somewhat enjoy something, but, and when it's bad, we can trash it, so you should still watch it. Don't just quit watching it. And, I'm never gonna stop watching Star Wars, that's crazy. I don't care how diluted it is. I want to spit in their faces when they are ruining my franchise. I don't care how trash it is. I'm going to sit down and watch it. That way I have the ability to say what needs to be said. For example, here, this is completely ridiculous and absurd. So this is basically a article saying Star Wars is dead. Disney Wars is new and alive and will continue on for the rest of time. It's unfortunate. I hate to say this, I hate to talk about this, but this was a huge article I saw that just proves there's not even a canon anymore. It's just a mix and jumble of different visions trying to match together when they absolutely do not at all. And that's unfortunate. I think the best thing for them to do would just dismantle the whole timeline and just do it in sections, because that's practically what they're doing now. There's no cohesive timeline, and he's saying there doesn't have to be when there should be. Like, why would there not be a timeline? You know, they're called episode for a reason, which is another thing Disney Star Wars has tried to hide and destroy, is the episode title of every Star Wars movie. They are trying to bury it and destroy it because it has a connection to George Lucas. They are trying to wipe that out. Look at all the DVD cases. Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, not Star Wars Episode 3. You know, and you could be thinking, oh, that's picky, that's simple. But in reality, why would they remove that when that's something George specifically put for Star Wars that would separate it from other franchises? You know, it helps it feel even more otherworldly, even more different, right? But Disney, no. They want to commercialize and industrialize Star Wars, which they have done, in their view, very successfully and have destroyed it for the rest of us. So that's sad, you know, but what do I always say? All we need is those 6 movies. All we need is Clone Wars. All we need is Legends, and we will be happy Star Wars fans for the rest of our lives. But for the new kids, I'm feel bad for them because they're never gonna know what it's like to be, know what it's like to see, differentiate George's Star Wars from the rest. They're never gonna get to see that and just see the kind of reality of the disaster of the situation. And again, you can't throw the ists and the phobes. Okay, like you can't. I say lesbian witches because yeah, that was the focus. That's literally why they're there. Is because Lucasfilm, Leslie Headland wants to push that message. She does. She's said it before. Like this is, it's so evident. So again, I'm just speaking fact. I'm not being, whatever about it. It's just, of course, they have to, you know, diminish our characters we love so much with these random nobodies that came out of nowhere, and of course have to throw their agendas in as well, which drives me insane every time I see it. Power of one, power of two, power of many. Like this garbage, dude. So garbage. Disney Star Wars. Um, Another Star Wars disaster here, guys. Complete Disney Star Wars meltdown. Gone, cooked. The Filoni faithful are starting to fall to pieces. I know many of them, who I'm friends with many of them, and they are all starting to doubt Disney Star Wars. The Acolyte has officially ignited the flame to burn Star Wars to the ground and to burn themselves to the ground with it, because it is currently sitting at a 15% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, one of the worst audience scores for a television series on the website itself. So I hope you guys realize how much of a disaster Disney Star Wars is in right now, how much of George's vision is being thrown out the window, disregarded, and disrespected. Um, Welcome to the reality of Star Wars, where I don't sugarcoat things anymore like I used to. It is gone. It is destroyed. And we must destroy Disney Star Wars, or else it will continue to bring us pain and it will continue to ruin the franchise. So until we get a whole new office of Lucasfilm people who like Star Wars and who are fans, um, I will not be supporting this at all. And I'm not going to shut up either. And all the shills try to get us to shut up. They try to get all the Lucas fans to just shut up and move on. Which is absurd. They say, I saw this shill. I'm going to pull it up right now. It's Retney's Holocron. I'm going to give him a shout out. Retney's Holocron is a Disney Star Wars shill, and an othetic shill as well. He's not just a shill. That's too nice. He's an othetic shill. He says, my advice for the fans that claim Star Wars is dead and act toxic. So he plays the clip of, learn to let go of everything you fear to lose from Revenge of the Sith. And he labels Anakin as, toxic fans, and Yoda as, Disney Star Wars shills who love the Acolyte. and it's basically Yoda telling Anakin to move on and let go of things. And then he captions it and says, maybe it's time for you to move on from Star Wars and let the rest of us enjoy it. And then puts hashtag Star Wars. So you're telling me to let go of the franchise that I have loved since I was a kid, the franchise that has grown me into the person who I am today? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't line up. That's not fair. There is no one on the face of the earth who could stop me from being a Star Wars fan. These Disney shills want to destroy you, want to wreck every Star Wars fan on the face of the earth just so just so they can get to premieres, just so they can get to really weird and odd, mysterious meetings and round tables with other Disney shills and other Lucasfilm executives. They want to sell their soul to the company in order for their own personal gain, which is the definition of a shill. So that is unfortunate. Retney's Holocron is a shill. Diamond Figs is a shill. Star Wars Replicas is a shill. Carly King is a shill. Eric Voss is a shill. Star Wars Explained, they are shills. Kyle Katarn is a shill. And the shill list just goes on and on and on. They do not want anybody to criticize the disaster of the Acolyte, or they will have a Star Wars meltdown. Unfortunately, all of the show creators are having a complete Star Wars meltdown over the Rotten Tomatoes bombing of the Acolyte on the website, and it really offends them, and because they're conflicted souls and they know it's crap, so therefore they must attack us for it because Disney has commanded them to do so. So they claim that they're not being paid to say the things they say. They claim that they're not benefiting from the things they say, but I know that that is false. I'm not going to all the premieres. I'm not going to roundtable meetings. I'm not going to 6,000 things all the time because I am not a shill and because I do not care about Disney Star Wars. I do not need to go to premieres to be a happy fan. I do not need to go to mysterious roundtable meetings that was meant to just mobilize the troops for the Acolyte. I believe that's all it was. It was a group meeting of a bunch of shills, and they just told them all to go attack the real fans who don't just who aren't toxic and respect George's vision. They said go after them, shut them up, tell them make them feel alone, make them feel numbered. They're like the Galactic Empire. That is what Disney is. They're like the woke Galactic Empire. That's all they are. And it's unfortunate. They're communists. They don't want any other point of view other than, let everyone do whatever they want. And that's extremely, very communist point of view. So, yeah, it is, unfortunately. It's the empire's the opposite of communism. So I guess that's not even, they're like extreme rebels, I guess. Extreme rebels. But yeah, so we have lost control of Star Wars. It is out of control. There is no security. There is no police. There is no one holding it under control. It will be a disaster for the rest of time until we bring it to its knees. Avenge Star Wars. See you in the next video. Screw Disney Star Wars. Screw all the shills. I am a fan forever. I don't care what you say to me. I don't care what you label me. I don't care if you call me toxic. I am fighting this fight, and we will win, and you will lose. Till the next time, may the Force be with you always.